In Sri Lanka, you'll all have seen government statements that the military operations are now over, and that all the civilians are out of the previous conflict zone. Obviously, we're relieved that the fighting is finished, and hope that all the civilians are indeed out of that zone, and indeed heading towards safety. But it's hard for us to be absolutely sure about that for the moment. Obviously, that is one of the things which is we're still trying to check insofar as we're able to do that. But we believe that the civilians are actually out of that zone on the basis of what we know at the moment. What that means is that there are around 220,000 people altogether who've already reached the camps. That includes an extra 20,000 in the last 2 or 3 days. And we think there are another 40 to 60,000 on the way to the camps through the crossing point at Omantai, and on the way to the camps near Vavunia, in particular the major camp at Menik Farm. That poses obviously major humanitarian challenges, a further large influx of people, 60 to 80,000 people over a short period. This poses major challenges in terms of shelter, in terms of the provision of basic services, food, clean water, medical services and so on. But the government and the agencies on the spot are heavily engaged in doing that, making sure that more tents are being erected, more land is being cleared, to make sure that the reception is as good as it can be. As we said before, the conditions in these camps are not certainly not ideal and not up to international standards yet, but everybody's working very hard to try to make sure that they are. One of our concerns is that the Menik Farm site, the main site near Vavunia, is now very large indeed in terms of a camp, and there are issues of overcrowding there. But a major effort's been made. I think over UNHCR and others have erected over 25,000 shelters and tents in the last few weeks, so a major effort has been made, and that will continue. Because of the sheer scale of the need, renewed appeal was made, as you know, a couple of weeks ago, and SURF has allocated, I've allocated from SURF just over $11 million to help with that response. There may be more resources needed in the future, but we'll have to look at that as we go forward. Beyond the actual provision of physical facilities in the camps, there are the issues we've raised on many occasions: the civilian nature of those camps, freedom of movement, distribution of ID cards to those in the camp so they can enjoy freedom of movement, the issues of access to the camps also. We've had full access so far, and we hope that will be maintained, because that's absolutely vital for us. Family reunification remains an issue for indeed some of the old inhabitants of the camps, but also, I guess, for the new ones. So there are many issues there which we've raised in the past and will continue to be very important. I think beyond that, a key question, obviously, which will arise more and more now that the fighting seems to be over, is the question of resettlement, how fast that can happen, and how fast any kind of reconciliation process can start, with a view to the kind of political settlement that we all want to see, which would enable some of these wounds to continue to be healed. Obviously, we've been concerned all the way through with the numbers of deaths and injuries inside that conflict zone, especially as it got smaller and smaller, but there's nothing really new I can say to you about that, about those numbers, which we've never been able to address satisfactorily. But of course we have fears that in the course of the last few days of the campaign there were extra deaths of civilians, despite all the efforts that may have been made to avoid that. But as I say, I don't have any figures or reliable information I can give you on that score. Vijay Nambiar is there, as you know, and is pursuing these issues on the spot, and I think we'll be visiting the camp area tomorrow to see for himself how things are going.